Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. It is Pokémon Legends ZA week, so we will be talking a decent bit about our impressions of that game, but another Pokémon game is also celebrating its birthday this week, so we'll be doing a deep dive into the making of Pokémon Gold and Silver, as that legendary duo of games turned 25 years old this week. Joining me for that is your friend and mine, Pokemon Master and Doctor Extraordinaire, Ben Richlin. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Brian?
I am doing well as well. It is a super busy season. I got my copy of Pokemon Legends ZA the morning of this recording, so we're not going to have a full-on review. Nintendo is unfortunately still not re-added us to the pre-launch distribution. So as a result, we won't have a full review discussion here, but we are going to give impressions. I've put about 4 hours into the game, so we'll be talking a good bit about that in this first segment, and then we'll jump over into talking about Pokemon Gold and Silver in the main segment. But there's also a couple news stories we're going to touch on, as well as another game that I've put a few hours into that hit Switch this week. So we have a lot to cover over the course of this, but Ben, you went to Comic-Con. We don't have a ton to really talk about coming out of that. There was some cool Marvel TV trailers and news and everything that came out, but talk to me about the experience. You're a guy who lives in the greater New York area, aka New Jersey.
I do.
So you've been to New York Comic-Con. How many Comic-Cons have you been to in New York?
So this would be my 7th.
Okay.
This is my first time coming back to it since before the pandemic. So
All right.
I hadn't done it in 6 years, which is a weird number to say. And it definitely has changed. It feels like it's not, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as fun. Maybe I'm just getting old. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, we're all getting old, Ben. I think.
Yeah. It's not a possibility that I'm getting old. We are getting old. Look, it's just strange that they have a Walmart booth and they have like an eBay booth, and just it's odd.
Yeah, I mean, you messaged that to me over the weekend, and like, it is a bummer, but it's also like kind of what I told you is like, it's kind of the result of what a lot of us have experienced, whether you're a Pokemon fan or you're an anime fan or anything. It's the mainstreamification of all these previously niche hobbies. Like comic books, like even 15 years ago, were not anywhere near like the mainstream consciousness that they are today.
Right.
So that's why you have these giant corporations jumping in, like Walmart, like eBay. And yeah, it does kind of impact the vibes, I would imagine.
It's just so strange. Like, I don't want to say like, well, in my day it was blah, 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 blah. But like, even seeing certain things like Pokemon cards have become like the number one thing now. And it wasn't that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound gatekeepy, but it felt a lot better when it wasn't the number one thing. Because now it's just all about, well, is it getting graded or is it not getting graded? And like, those were things that I saw at booths and stuff. Like, that's why eBay has a booth and everything like that, because of just how that has soaked up the volume. Like, when I think of Pokemon cards, I think of putting them in a binder and somewhat grading them, but also playing the card game. Not just like straight up slabbing. I don't know. It's hard for me to articulate it all.
No, it just doesn't feel like you're like kind of small, fun little club that it once was. Now it's kind of like corporatized. Capitalism has taken full hold of it.
Exactly. It's too mainstream. Things have become too mainstream. I will say though, like the parts that were really great. Like getting to see those Marvel trailers in the Marvel panel, I think was just like you'll see trailers online and stuff, but like the panel was just very electric. I think it was done very well. I got to see some cool DC stuff as well. And so, yeah, it was there were pluses and minuses. Will I go again? I don't know. We'll see.
It's interesting because Charlie Cox, the guy who plays Matt Murdock / Daredevil in the Daredevil TV shows, the last time or the only time I've been to a New York Comic Con was when they were promoting Daredevil season 3 on Netflix. So I actually saw him and Vincent D'Onofrio up on stage, similar to how you saw. Yeah.
And I got to meet them afterwards, and they signed a poster, and Vincent D'Onofrio said, "I met a Dr. Ben once. He used to sell me acid." And I'm like, "Well, it's not the 60s anymore, Vince." And he said, that was the 70s, but a pleasure meeting you, Dr. Ben.
Wow, you insulted him by calling him old.
A little bit, but I consider it a good interaction. But actually, it's funny that you say that, because there was a little bit of video game talk with Charlie Cox. He was interviewed about, I think, about Claire Obscure. Right?
Yeah, he's the lead in that game.
Yeah, and I think somebody said to him, "Oh, Glenn Powell's a big fan of that game, and he wants to play the lead." And he's like, "Great, he's gonna take my lead," like if they do a movie or something. So.
I mean, if you've played Claire Obscure, you know the only choice is Robert Pattinson, because he looks just like the main character of Claire Obscure. Yeah. So, I mean, that would be the obvious choice. But, I mean, outside of Charlie Cox, who is literally the lead in the game and is also a Hollywood actor. So, I mean...
He hasn't played the game yet.
Well, I mean, he's already lived it, so...
Yeah, he's lived it, so yeah.
But, yeah, New York Comic Con, regardless of kind of the commodification of all of our hobbies, I think it's still probably a really great time, right?
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things where it's better with friends. On Friday, I went with one of my best friends, and she did some cosplay as one of the K-pop Demon Hunters characters, and she had a great time. And it's nice to see her having a great time. It's nice to see my friends having a great time.
Of course.
So look, if I go again next year, I'm dragging your ass there.
Hey, I want to go. I wish I could have gone, but it just didn't work out with the timing and everything. But
well, let's make it happen next year.
We are hoping that we'll be both going to MAGFest in January in National Harbor, Maryland. So that's very exciting for me. As long as no surprise trips or assignments pop up on my end, I have that marked off as PTO, that I am going to be, out of office and visiting one of my favorite gaming expos of the calendar year that I haven't been to since 2014, I think. So it's been
I've never done it, and I'm doing something pretty high profile for it.
Yeah.
What has been your experience with it?
It's great. I mean, again, I haven't been there in over a decade, so MAGFest is it's so focused on gaming, but also music. So it's you get a lot of cover bands. You can just walk through. It takes place at this hotel, and you just basically walk through, and you can see live music at pretty much any time of the day. There's rooms that have smaller bands playing, and it's okay, this band's just playing metal Mega Man covers, and then this other band is playing Persona music or whatever. And then they usually have speedrunners. One of my favorites is Bit Brigade, which is a speedrunning. They have a speedrunner come out on stage, and then they have a live band play the soundtrack of the game that he's playing as he speedruns, which is super cool. I've seen it for the original Castlevania, and I've seen it for the original Legend of Zelda. And that was super cool to see. And then they'll have a main stage. And the one time that I've gone to the main stage, it was for Nobuo Uematsu, the composer of the old school Final Fantasy games. He had his rock band performing, which was incredible. Cool. And I got to meet Uematsu because of that. So yeah, I mean, it's really awesome. There's a giant free play arcade in there. There's a giant exhibitors, the alley, I forget what it's called at Comic-Con, the Merchants Alley or whatever, where it's just a bunch
Rock
of shops.
Island.
Yeah, so a bunch of shops lined up, and I think I got my copy of Pokemon Leaf Green there back in 2012.
Wow.
Before it skyrocketed in value. And then you be prepared to hear a lot of Colossus roars from the original X-Men arcade game. that became a meme at MAGFest because the free play arcade, for whatever reason, the X-Men arcade machine was so much louder than everything else. So again, all hours of the night, you could go in this 24-hour free play arcade, and no matter what was going on, you could be standing next to the Star Wars arcade cabinet, and across the entire thing, or the pinball machines even, how loud they are, you would hear the Colossus roar just echoing through the entire hall. So it became kind of a call and response at MAGFest, where you would hear somebody in the distance go, "Oh," and everybody would just respond back with that same thing, to the point
That's funny.
that the hotel that hosts it, in like the common areas where it's not like the convention center area, had to put up a sign with Colossus doing like the pose and a giant circle and X through it. Like, do not do the Colossus roar in this area. You're disturbing the other guests at the hotel.
That's pretty great. That's pretty great. So I'm going to be there because Johnny Gioeli, my buddy, is going to be doing a concert there. We're doing a live Crush 40 experience. So Johnny's going to be playing with a live band.
So Crush 40, for people who are unaware, is the band that did a lot of the modern Sonic music. So like Live and Learn, which is the biggest hit, but like Open Your Heart from Sonic Adventure 1, What I'm Made Of from Sonic Heroes, as well as the Sonic Heroes theme. Just down the list, all of the amazing songs that the kind of like power metal style of music that we got in like the early 2000s all the way up to like the mid 2010s.
Right. And so we're going to be doing a Crush 40 experience. So it's going to be Johnny with a live band. And there's going to be some surprises as well. We're putting together the set list and everything, and everybody's practicing, and we're all really excited about it.
Yeah, the big surprise is I'm coming out on stage and everybody's going to boo me and throw tomatoes my way.
That's well, not really a surprise anymore, but yes. You'll be crowd surfing.
So that's super exciting. That's amazing news that Johnny, who has been he's not in the games industry. He's not really even that big of a gamer, but he is beloved in the industry. He's beloved in especially the Sonic community. Like he's he's the sound of Sonic. He is. He's like up there with like the composers of the classic games, and Jun Senoue, who has been with Sega since the early 90s and doing sound for them, and also the guitarist of Crush 40, which it doesn't sound like he's going to be a part of this, but he will. It's going to be music that he helped write. So really exciting stuff to hear that Johnny's going to be there, and I'm super stoked to go to MAGFest and see him live. I've seen him live one time before, and that was for the San Diego Comic-Con anniversary party that they did, where they announced Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces.
Yeah.
So I saw him
like
perform.
The 15th anniversry or something like that.
I think it was 20th, maybe.
Or 20th, yeah.
Something like that. It was or 25th. I don't know. It was 2016 or 2016. So that would have been the 25th anniversary.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Crazy.
Super exciting for that. Very much looking forward to MAGFest. Glad to hear that NYCC, while disappointing in some ways, was super fun in other ways.
I don't regret going.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to go again next year, but
you will. You 100% will, because that is the only way that I'm going to go. So can't have one without the other.
All right. Well, I will mark it on my calendar.
Yes.
But let's get into a little bit of news here. There hasn't been much in way of news this week, but I did want to briefly touch on the fact that Nintendo was actually hacked by a group called the Crimson Collective. There were initial fears that personal information was compromised, or that like a bunch of like development assets had leaked, but according to Nintendo, it was minimal damage. Here's their official statement. They said, quote, "We have not confirmed any leak of personal information, and there has been no leak of development or business information." So according to Nintendo, it seems that the hack was mostly used to do some kind of digital vandalism, but nothing too super disruptive. But that said, there was also a hack of Pokemon about a year ago, and those hackers have now released a ton of information. Among that was early development videos from Pokemon Legends ZA, as well as some indications of what is on the horizon for the Pokemon franchise. My personal policy, is to not cover any of the contents of leaks that were obtained by malicious hacks. So we will not be getting into the contents of those, but just thought it was worth noting. Ben, there's also one other piece of news that came in right before we jumped onto this podcast that I do want to talk about. So Shinobi Art of Vengeance, a game that I love. It's in the top 3 of the year for me. It's published by Sega, developed by Lizard Cube, which is the developer behind Streets of Rage 4. Honestly, one of the best action games, one of the best 2D action games, especially, that I have played in many years. They have a Sega Villains Stage DLC that is coming out. They've already announced 2 of the 3 villains that you're going to fight that are crossover villains from other Sega games. So it was Dr. Eggman, obviously. Of course it's going to be Dr. Eggman. Death Adder from Golden Axe. So that's a deep cut. And then we got the third announcement just before we jumped on, and it is a really fun pick. I was speculating, like, all right, do they go with just something like super off the wall? Like, do they go with like a Persona villain? Do they go with like the Taxi from Crazy Taxi or something like that? Or like maybe like one of the villains from Super Monkey Ball? But no, they are going to RGG Studios for the Yakuza series. Goro Majima is the third villain to join the Sega Villains Stage DLC. So joining Dr. Eggman and the Death Adder, we now have Majima. We still don't know when it's coming out, but that's a fun addition. Like, are you a Yakuza fan?
You know what? I started playing Like a Dragon.
Okay.
Yakuza Like a Dragon, and but other things just came up, and I just like didn't really like get fully into it. It does seem like it's like the franchise 100% seems like it's up my alley. And at some point when things slow down, whenever that is, yes, I will absolutely check out Yakuza.
You know what you should do, especially if you want to become familiar with Majima and like the mainline series, which stars Kiryu. You should play Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, which just came out on Switch 2. Because it not only adds extra content that was, I guess, previously either cut or only available in the Japanese version. I think it added English voiceover. And Yakuza 0 is a prequel to the rest of the series. And it's a dual protagonist story. So Majima isn't a villain in this one. He is a protagonist, a playable protagonist alongside Kiryu. Kiryu is like the main series protagonist before it changed like fully over to the Like a Dragon franchise, and like Ichiban became like the main protagonist in those games. But yeah, it tells an incredible story. Majima is one of the best characters in any Sega game in that game, I would say. You really, really fall in love with the character, and it's like they do a great job with that game, and it's, to this day, it's my favorite Yakuza game.
Interesting.
So yeah, it just came to Switch 2 at launch of the Switch 2. It's been on PS4, I think, since 2017 in the US.
You were talking about this game and how much you liked it.
Yeah. I mean, I love the Yakuza series. What I've played of it, I've only played 4 entries, but it's a fantastic series. And that's the older games like Yakuza 0, before the Like a Dragon kind of Ichiban games started. It's all action. It's not turn-based combat the way that the Ichiban games are. So definitely my recommendation would be to jump on that Yakuza 0 if you want. But
you were also talking to me about how much you really like Shinobi.
Yeah. Shinobi is incredible. Those are both amazing games that Sega has put out recently. Art of Vengeance, again, one of my favorite games of the year. It's right now, before I haven't put enough time into Pokemon Legends ZA, which is going to be our next topic of discussion here, to really rank it yet. But right now, where things stand, Shinobi Art of Vengeance is my number 2 game of the year, behind Ghost of Yotei.
Right.
So Ghost of Yotei, I was predisposed to like this because I love Tsushima so much.
Yeah. I still haven't finished Metaphor.
Oh man, that
I'm like at the end of it.
Well,
I still haven't finished it.
It's a long game, so it's not.
It's a long game.
It's from the people who make Persona, so of course it's going to be a long game.
Yes, and I have a
But
full-time job.
But Ben, we're going to transition over to a couple of impressions that I want to give. But before we jump into those topics, just a reminder that you are listening to the All Things Nintendo podcast. This show arrives in your podcast feeds each and every Friday, completely free. But if you'd like to support me and allow me to keep on making these episodes week after week, you can join the Patreon for as little as $3 a month. That gets you access to the community Discord, which lets you chat it up with fellow listeners of the show. Plus, it gets you priority access to Q&A episodes. But there are also $5 and $10 tiers that get you things like early and ad-free episodes, plus shout-outs at the end of every show. Just go to patreon.com and search All Things Nintendo. Support from them, it's not an exaggeration to say that they are the reason I'm able to keep doing the show week after week. So if you would like to be a part of that, just head on over to the Patreon page and sign up for whatever tier you're able to sign up for. All right, Ben, as I mentioned at the top of the show, one of Nintendo's biggest releases of the year came out this week, and it is Pokémon Legends ZA. This is a game we've talked a lot about in the lead up. I went to Paris to play it and came away from that early gameplay session extremely impressed. And I have put about 4 hours into the full game now that it is out. And just want to talk a little bit about my impressions. I am still pretty positive, although I will say the opening is quite slow. I'm about 3.5, 4 hours of like story in at this point, and it's just starting to kind of wrap up kind of the exposition. It feels like where it's like there's still a lot of action going on where I'm like, okay, well, like it's breaking up kind of like the narrative dump and like the tutorialization by being like, okay, yeah, that's all we need to do for today. Go spend the rest of your day catching wild Pokemon or completing side missions or battling and like completing these battle zone challenges and everything. But it's still like, all right, you've done that. Good job. Now let's go talk to this character where you're going to learn another layer of like the gameplay loop. So It is a little bit of a slog early on, but they've definitely paced it better than the early hours of Pokemon Legends Arceus, which I remember I was 2.5 hours deep into Pokemon Legends Arceus and being like, this is just awful. Like this is like, I felt like remorseful that I had like signed on to do that review because I was like, oh my God, I hope the entire game is not like this, because it was just like, just dialogue for hours and like very minimal action. But then once it opened up, it became one of my favorite Pokemon games ever. So that was the thing there. This is much more well-paced. It's just because it's more well-paced and interspersed with the action and like the actual gameplay loops, it's spread out over an elongated period.
Do you feel like this would have worked better if we finally did something that Pokemon, the main series games, has never had? Voice acting.
That's still one of the big sticking points for Pokemon, right? Like, it's like,
why are we there? That's why.
I would honestly be more on board with them revamping the audio from the Pokemon themselves, because it still feels so. I know that we are down this
computers.
Path. We're so far down this path, and it's like we can't change it now because everybody knows what a Pikachu sounds like. Everybody knows what a Charmander sounds like. The little digitized cries that were necessitated by the Game Boy.
Drowsy is blananana, blananana.
Exactly. Yeah. So everybody knows that. So I don't know. It just feels weird that like we haven't made that leap over to having them like sound like they do in the anime, where it's like they come out and they say their name or they make the squawks that they make in the anime. That would actually be more annoying. You think so?
Drowsy, 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 drowsy. Like that's annoying. I think that a Pokemon trying to have a conversation with me while like saying its name constantly, I feel like would be obnoxious.
I get that, but like, I don't know, maybe it just needs an upgrade in the sound quality so it doesn't sound like they're coming out, like the sound is coming out of like a synthesizer, right?
Computers, yeah.
Exactly. So that's the thing I would rather them like make them sound like actual organic creatures, right? Like don't make them...
The voice acting I was referring to was the human characters.
Of course, yeah, yeah, and that's the other jarring thing, but I don't think that that is as pressing to me or distracting to me as having the Pokemon sound the way they do. That said,
Mm,
I would be on board with voice acting. At the very least, I will say that they've upgraded their animations in this one. It no longer feels quite like Final Fantasy X on PS2 in terms of like the level of interactivity. I would say maybe they've reached like Final Fantasy 12 level, which is also on
yeah,
PS2, levels of interactivity between the characters.
sure.
It's still like, hey, Totodile, do a tackle, and he just kind of runs up to the character or the other Pokemon, and then like a move comes out, like a move animation, more so than like he does like a lunge move, but it's more of like this effect doing like the impact. It's not, and like, hey, Totodile, do bite, and he doesn't go up and bite the other Pokemon. Instead, like the giant like kind of
You see
hologram like
yeah,
jaws.
superimposed image of teeth.
Yeah. So like that I still would like to see them upgrade. Like it's so jarring going from Ghost of Yote where everything is so like impactful and physical and visceral
Yeah.
to seeing this and it's like, okay, yeah, this definitely does not feel as connected. Like the characters feel like they're kind of just like independent of one another. Again, I'm very early in my playthrough, so maybe some of the more like the upgraded moves will be more involved in terms of animation, but the early stuff is
So
not promising.
for so long, it has felt. I would probably say since not maybe not the DS era, but definitely the 3DS era, that each Pokemon game that has come out has been a step towards what they really want to do, and nothing has felt like really what they want to do.
Yeah.
Like we're not there yet. We're not like we're just taking steps towards there. And
It felt like Scarlet and Violet was their first attempt to really do what they want to do, but it was a technical disaster on the Switch 1 and now the Switch 2
yes,
version is available. It's like, okay, I see where they were going for with this, but now Legends ZA is I mean, and you know, it's a spin-off franchise if nothing else. So they had that license to experiment, but I don't know. Like this feels like I would say Arceus was testing grounds for what they were going to try with Scarlet and Violet, the same way that I would imagine that ZA is testing grounds for what they're going to do with the next generation of mainline.
so Scarlet and Violet, I did play a little bit on Switch 2, and yes, runs far better. And I'm somebody who finished Violet on Switch 1. But if I'm looking and I'm playing, like one of the reasons why I can't like sit down and play Scarlet and just like sit there and enjoy the ride is because it feels so barren and empty.
That's fair.
And my hope is that with Lumioi City, ZA, we're in a very urban setting. We're locked to one city,
Hmm.
but it's got different like sections. My understanding is that it feels a lot like the Pokemon anime, which yes, please give me that. Um,
Yeah,
and
it
then
does.
my hope for Gen 10 is that it's going to be a lot like it'll be some like Pokemon will have finally realized what they want to do. No more half measures,
Well, the thing
please.
is, like, the battle system really does make you feel like you're in an actual battle instead of
That's
like
cool.
the strategy of like a turn-based. And I love turn-based games, but like
Yeah.
it does feel like this is like that next like generational leap forward for the Pokemon franchise is installing some degree of real-time action. And this I love the way the battle system works where it's like there are like elements of positioning need to be like the right way and like you have to like monitor your four moves on the face button and like as soon as like while you're just running around like you have to avoid moves as a trainer. So like if like hydro pump is coming your way, you need to like either sprint or dodge roll out of the way if it's like aimed towards you. Like if you're standing behind your Pokemon that's in the crosshairs,
Or a rogue mega
or a
Pokemon.
rogue mega Pokemon or wild Pokemon. If you don't have your Pokemon
Yeah.
out, the wild Pokemon will attack you. And if you take on too much damage, either in battle or by wild Pokemon or in like a boss battle, you
You
can
explode.
black out and you can wake up at a Pokemon Center and have to like
You
start
black out.
start it over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You don't explode.
you don't explode, even though some of those moves would definitely cause you to explode.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Bodily harm.
yeah, you don't want to take a hyper beam to the face.
Yeah.
So with that, like I do really appreciate that like you also have to monitor like the cooldowns of each individual move
That's
because
cool.
it's
I like
like
it.
all right, like and you have to kind of play the long game. Like I don't really in like the turn-based games, I don't use moves like Leer or Screech or Growl, like moves that lower
Stat
yeah,
affecting.
stat
Yeah.
yeah, lowering enemy stats or buffing your own because it's like in a turn-based game it feels so precious every single turn, so or you're so overpowered in most of the games that you're just like, well, I don't need to do that, I can just use Vine Whip and take this Pokemon out in like 2 turns and they're going to do like minimal damage to me. So
Right.
in this one though, because everything operates on a cooldown, I'll be like, okay, Totodile, use Bite, then use Water Gun, then use Tackle, and then while those three are recharging, yeah, why not lower his defenses and use Leer?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Cool.
or like if you're like a level 10 and I had a situation where I was a level 10, like all my Pokemon were like around level 10, like, 8 to 11 was like their range. And there was like
Mm.
an 18 Pidgeotto. And it was in like the battle zone. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I need to play the long game with this because I'm just going to have to chip away. So I sent out one of my Pokemon and I didn't even try to do damage with them. All I did was just do like defense lowering attacks and attack lowering attacks on that high level Pokemon. And
Yeah.
then when it came time for me to send out my damage dealers, they were a lot more effective, even though like, they were still like 7 to 8 levels below the Pidgeotto.
That's great. Like hearing that sort of like line of thinking for gameplay. I don't think Gen 10 is going to have this. I think Gen 10 is going to go back to like the traditional turn based.
Yeah,
But
it's entirely possible. I'm giving it a 35% chance that we get
yeah,
this, or at least some degree of action, like real time action in Gen 10.
so my hope is that they find some weird mini like middle ground. I don't know because what you're describing to me as what's in Legends sounds like I'm going to really enjoy this change of pace for
Yeah.
sure.
And I love that, like, so by day, you are out and like doing side missions, talking to NPCs. Like, some of them are like there was one where like I went up to a person, he's like, oh, there's like this giant Bunnelby running around,
Yeah.
and he's attacking people. He's not in the wild zone. He's just out in this alley. Like, can you go help me take care of him? And you go over there and you fight. It's an alpha Bunnelby, so it's like super powerful. There's alpha
So alphas are
Pokemon.
back from Legends.
Yeah, and they're large.
Arceus.
They got the glowing red eyes. And there was an interesting little tidbit where they referenced. They're like, yeah, we heard about the like alpha Pokemon like this in like a another region. I forget what the name of it was, but it was a long time ago. Yeah, Hisui region.
Yeah.
I wanted to scream at
Sui
the TV,
region. Yeah.
uh, but yeah, it's cool that and they did reference like the Galar region in one of the conversations that like I had with an NPC. So it's cool that they are referencing the broader Pokemon world.
Yeah.
So I'm really liking the interconnectivity of like the lore right now, where it's like they've referenced Legends Arceus, they've referenced Sword and Shield.
I hear there's a museum also
Oh,
that
really? I haven't gotten to
references
that point yet.
Arceus like heavily. And this game takes place 5 years. I thought it was like very far after XY. This takes place exactly 5 years. That's
Mm-hmm.
confirmed.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a near future release after the events of X and Y. So far, the cast of characters have been fun. It's funny because like when you go, so during the day after, if you're not doing the side missions, you can use that time to either like go shopping and like it's Paris based. Lumiose is based on Paris, so it's like very fashion oriented, where it's like there's so much character customization. Like
Which is great because we were locked to just school uniforms in Scarlet and Violet.
yeah, so it's cool that they have a lot of customization. I put on a cool little outfit on my guy. You can change around like hats, sunglasses, earrings, shirts, shoes, socks, pants, all that stuff, or like full outfits.
There's something that I was reading, and it's not a spoiler. I just want to
Yeah, we
put
are
that
going to
out.
try to keep this as spoiler free as possible. I know we've talked a little bit
There,
about minor dialogue here and there.
there there's an interesting mechanic having to do with shiny hunting,
Okay.
which is what a lot of people love. So, good news, bad news time. First of all, this game you cannot disable autosave,
Mm-hmm.
which is unlike the previous Pokemon releases that have had autosave, like which started with, I think, Sword and Shield. This is actually a very good thing because that helps with shiny hunting. So apparently, if you run into a shiny Pokemon in the overworld, that Pokemon will always stay there, even if you
Oh.
leave the area or if the time of day changes, unless you knock out the Pokemon or the Pokemon, like, or you make the Pokemon run away. So, like, let's say you see a shiny Pokemon and it's in a area that you can't reach yet, you can come back
Oh.
anytime and get it. So it locks that Pokemon. Here's the catch, though. From what I was reading, the game can only store 10 shiny Pokemon. It's so strange. Like,
I mean,
it
I
can
guess that
only
makes them
store
extra
10
rare, but
Yeah, yeah. But,
um,
like,
I will say it is. I've had several Pokemon run from me.
interesting.
They are
Okay.
like kind of like the more skittish like species. You know, it was like a Pichu that ran away
Yeah.
from me. Like when I tried to catch him.
But
Um,
autosave also only happens after a story beat or
okay,
something like that. So, like, you can still reload that.
got it. Um, but yeah, so like the wild zones are so far they're fairly straightforward and mechanical, but it is cool
Yeah.
that like when you enter a wild zone, you can press start or plus on your Switch controller and it brings up a map of the wild zone so you can try and poke around and see if there's like hidden areas, but it also shows you a list of all like either like not a list but like silhouettes of the Pokemon that are in that wild zone.
Oh man, you're making me. I don't want to work tomorrow.
So
Like,
you can actually be like, all right, well, I've caught four of the five Pokemon that it says are in here.
yeah,
So that encourages you to look around a little bit more. And sometimes you can't
checklist.
get to the area yet because it's like, oh, I don't have like the ability to like remove like these vines, or like early on you come up against some boulders that you can't smash. So you got to get a
Yeah,
Pokemon with Rock Smash, and then you go back. So there's almost like a little bit of like a Metroidvania style thing there, because it's like you go into a
interesting.
wild zone and you're like, oh crap, I can't get up there because like clearly there's some upgrade that's going to allow you to either glide or jump. And
Well, this is like the old Pokemon games too. There were
yeah,
paths that you would be like, oh, I see a boulder there, or I don't have strength yet, and so it's sort of like that too.
yeah. So it's fun and rewarding in that way, and like it seems like there's going to be like some sort of surf mechanic because there's lots of water that
Of
I
course,
see
there
that I'm like,
always
oh,
is.
I can't get across there. Fast travel is, you don't have to have fly or anything like that. You can fast travel to like Pokemon centers after you visit them, which is very helpful. Um, and then at night, you go to battle zones instead of wild zones, and the battle zones are just going around and fighting Pokemon trainers. And you
They
can
are where the battle zones were, or the wild zones were, right?
I
Like
don't
all the
know if they're the
like
same
wild zones
ones.
become the battle zones.
No, I think they're separate areas if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
interesting.
They're
Okay.
just different regions get like kind of like quartered off, and with the battle zones, it's cool because you're going around and you can sneak up on trainers to like get like a preemptive strike on them. And if you hit them, like if it's a good enough matchup, you can actually knock them out on that one single blow. And there's also
Right.
side missions that you can pick up within there. That's like you'll get like these medals that are based on like, all right, you knocked out a Pokemon with a normal type attack, or you like snuck up on a Pokemon and used a water type attack on them to knock them out in a single blow, and things like that. So,
Yeah.
and then those can be used to, the medals I believe can be used for buying TMs.
Oh, okay. So it's another form of
And
currency.
then
Okay.
also you can get TMs for helping the researcher do different tasks. And the research tasks are like another checklist where it's like, catch three fire type Pokemon. And then when you complete that task, you get like the reward points that keep you
Hmm.
going. And then as you fill in the circle and level up your research level, you get a TM for every level that I've seen so far. So
Okay.
so like, and then once you catch like 3 fire types, it upgrades to the next level where it's like catch 5, then catch 8, then catch 12, then 15. So it's like you have incentive to keep on catching. So like there were like a bunch of Magikarp, and I'm like, all right, well, one, I want a really good Magikarp because I want to get a really good Gyarados. So I was like looking at like all the stats of them, but then as I was catching all the Magikarp, I was like, oh, okay, I'm getting like more and more water type rewards for this. So it's really rewarding in that way so far.
It sounds like field research tasks from Pokemon Go.
It absolutely is, and like I said, you're assisting the researcher of the region, so
Yeah,
it's very much inspired by that. And
interesting.
then you're helping a detective as well, which is where a lot of the side missions come into play, where it's like one case was like the woman was like, "Oh, I lost my wedding ring and my husband passed away, so I think I left it in the cemetery." And so you
Okay.
have to go in the cemetery, and there's a Pokemon that has picked it up, and you have to battle the Pokemon and
Ghost
get it.
Pokemon. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
So
Is
it's
is the is the detective Looker?
yes.
Oh, really? Okay, that makes me very happy. He's one of my favorite
Well, it's
characters.
not Looker is not the detective that you're searching or you're helping, but it's called the Looker Detective Agency.
Oh, that makes me less happy.
But I'm
That that's
sure. I mean, that may hint that we
I
see
hope he
him in the
pops up.
future.
Yeah, because at the end of X and Y, they that the detective agency, the post game became the Looker Detective Agency.
Yeah. So you are helping out the detective agency in that.
Mm.
So it's a character named Emma, who I like a lot so far.
Was from X and Y.
Yeah. So I like Emma. And then Tawny is the other character that's from Team MZ, which is like kind of like the team that you join very early on, and it's like a group of like 4 characters, and like you're basically going around and helping to like solve these problems and like level up your rank. So like after you collect enough like combat points, trainer points, battle points,
Battle points.
so when you get 1,000 at your current rank, you start at Z, and then
Yeah.
you have a promotion battle. And if you win that battle, it's like a mini boss battle. If you win that battle, you go up to the next one. So you're at Y, and then you go to the next battle zone the next night, and the trainers are all leveled up, and you have to fight them enough to get to 1,000, and then you get another promotion. And it's funny because a lot of the trainers have like grand ambitions, almost like they're politicians or like something, because they're like saying like, oh, when I reach rank A, I'm gonna do this for the people.
Oh,
And so like the
yeah.
first guy is like a taxi driver who is just like this lovable loser, and he goes, I've been a taxi driver, and when I become rank A, I'm going to abolish all other forms of transportation that aren't taxi. So it's like actually pretty funny. And there's another time that like made me laugh
Like there's a
pretty
level of
hard.
influence they will get
Yeah, so like
if they okay.
there was one research thing. I don't want to spoil it because it was very
Yeah.
funny, but like she was like, I really want this Pokemon, and then you like trade her that Pokemon, and she reads like, okay, well, this is what this Pokemon does, and it's like sometimes this Pokemon can be known to attack trainers. And the look on her face when she read that was so funny. She's like, she
That's
had like this
good.
look of like, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah.
So the writing
Have
is actually quite clever so far, especially the
that's
NPCs.
that's really good. That makes that like hearing that they put that sort of like love and thought makes it feel like you're actually in the anime or you're in the Pokemon world. Like that makes that is good world building. Have you run into AZ yet?
Yes.
Okay.
That guy looks like a freaking he looks like the Home Depot skeleton that people put on their lawns during Halloween.
It's very expensive.
He's extremely tall, and
Yeah.
he tells people he's 3,000 years old.
That's what he did in X and Y.
Yes, so he is he's quite creepy, but also very
Yeah.
friendly.
Yeah. Yeah. He's based on a he's based my understanding is that he's based on some sort of like Jewish mythology called the Wandering Jew. You can look this up. But like there's like some like actual like real world, not real world, but like there's some sort of like folklore parallel to him.
Okay. I'm looking it up right now. I don't see too much right off the bat, but also his wiki page on the Pokemon fandom is quite extensive. But yeah, I am having a great time with Pokemon Legends ZA, and I will be sharing my full impressions next week's episode. But now that you have it in hand, you sent me a picture.
I did.
You have it in hand. How excited are you to dive in?
I did dive in.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
tell you. So
No,
yeah,
I thought you hadn't gotten to it yet.
So I booted it up and I picked my eye shape and my hair color.
Okay, there you go. You're ready to write a review.
I'm ready to write a review. I'm ready for Game Informer now. Yeah.
But
yeah. So on Bulbapedia, AZ may be based on the medieval Christian legend of the Wandering Jew.
okay.
He may also be based on the Mesopotamian king Gilgamesh.
Oh, all right.
The Pokemon likes to take certain things and like toss it in and be like, some nerd will understand this.
They do love that.
Yeah.
Like
it's bananas. Pokemon's just bananas sometimes. Look, they'll add to the lore, but then they won't like provide like a full explanation of it. They'll just keep on adding more lore things, and then we have to watch other nerds who are nerdier than us make lore videos explaining all of it. I love it. It's crazy.
I go down those rabbit holes all the time too.
It's perfectly parallel to real life, where we don't sometimes have the answers to things. That's what Pokemon has created.
What was
Questions
the first
with no answers?
What was the first franchise you did like those deep lore dives where you just found yourself in a rabbit hole reading or watching everything you could of like?
That's a really good question. I mean, I feel like Pokemon's a big one. Not Sonic. Because Sonic, it's just sort of like what you see is what you get. And whenever they try to do lore, it's always a mess. And then they forget about it. Or then they try to like scrub it away, like Eggman Nega. Like, remember that guy?
They are doing a more concerted effort on the Sonic side with having
They
Ian
are.
Flynn.
Now they are. They now have a lore keeper. But like, I would say probably Pokemon.
Okay.
And maybe like I feel like a lot of it lately has been not lately, but like in the last like 5 or 6 years, Power Rangers.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, but the comics have really like fleshed out a lot more stuff. What about you?
I think Portal 2 was probably the first one that I ever did like a deep dive into like all the Easter eggs and lore and everything. But
sure.
In terms of like just reading wiki page after wiki page after wiki page, I think it was the Mass Effect trilogy.
Yeah.
There's just so much lore in that universe, and it's such a shame that it's been dormant for so long at this point.
That's crazy that it's been so dormant. Like, for Pokemon, I just remember, like, sitting in the computer lab in, like, summer camp, like, summer day camp, where I would go to the computer lab and I would just go on Bulbapedia. Like, this was early days of the internet, and everybody was just trying to figure things out. Like, did the legendary, like, who was the original Pokemon that led to like the legendary beasts and that sort of stuff. Yeah, it was all crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Pokemon lore that you can dive into and like what
and
inspirations
that you just don't have an answer
are.
For.
Like it took me way too long to understand that Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres were Uno, Dos, Tres. I did not know that for the first several years of my Pokemon fandom.
Yeah. Look, the Arceus lore is screwed up. Arceus is a straight up villain. He transported the main character and Ingo from the subway and just like stuck in the past with like never going back home. That is creepy. That's weird.
I mean, there's a lot of lore that I actually wrote. I think I've told you about this, where I've did an article for Game Informer about the creepiest Pokédex entries.
Yes, and I will never go near a Drifblim.
Yes, do not grab a balloon in the world of Pokemon.
Actually, my weight, I'm a little heavy right now, so I could be fine with the Drifblim. He only likes skinny people.
Yeah, it did say he dislikes heavy children, which is the funniest
Yes.
line in Pokedex history. Um, Evatel from X and Y.
Yeah.
Um, Basically, the Pokedex entry of that one, I remember when that first came out, it was like, if he ever dies, he takes the entire planet with him or something like that. I'm like, wow, okay, that's dark.
Gengar from Sun and Moon was like, if you run into this Pokemon, you have no chance.
Just give up. Yeah. That's it's pretty intense. But
Yeah.
I will give an update on my playthrough next week's episode. But for now, I'm quite positive. I think that Lumio City has a little bit of confusing design. It's not like the best designed like open area to run around in, but like it's not terrible. And everything else so far has been super fun. So looking
And
forward to dicing it up more next week.
and to piggyback off of what we just talked about, be sure to touch up on the Mega Evolution Pokedex entries because they are vastly different from they are like in X and Y they were vastly different than what they were in Alola because in X and Y, and I'm curious about how they are going to be in Legends, Pokemon were like happy to Mega Evolve, whereas in Alola they were in pain. Like the entries were saying like that they were like in excruciating pain for all the body morphs and everything like that.
Oh, jeez,
It was crazy.
that's
Culture, man.
that's terrible.
Yeah.
But that's available now if you'd like to check it out. And my impressions are based solely on the Switch 2 version. I've not checked out the Switch 1 version. Have you seen any videos of how it performs?
I haven't, but I did want to ask one more question about Legends,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
go for it.
We have the DLC that's coming out in January.
Yeah, the Raichu
Um,
DLC.
Yeah, Mega Dimension, I think it's called. Um, did you play the DLC for Scarlet and Violet?
I did not because it was such a downgrade in terms of like resolution from any other modern game, like resolution and frame rate, that it actually gave me a
Yeah.
headache going from Mortal Kombat 1 to the DLC of Scarlet and Violet, that I was like, nope, I am not going to do this. I might go back and play it now that
That's what I was going to say. If you're on the Switch too, look, it's worth playing. I thought that they were very good. Um, Today I bought the DLC for Legends.
Mhm.
I've already bought it, and you get the Pokeball set from Gold and Silver.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, you get a little Pokeball set of that.
That's fun.
Are you going to get the DLC?
Yeah.
Or it's always hard to say I'm going to definitely do this post-launch DLC that is like 6 months after the game has come out. Like that's a hard ask, but it is coming out in January, which is pretty light month.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it all plays out. But yeah, I fully plan on playing the DLC for this, because it wasn't that I didn't want to play the DLC for Scarlet and Violet. It just I
You would have been
couldn't
violently ill if you did.
I couldn't motivate myself to push through like readjusting my eyes to how technically poor the version of on Switch 1 was.
Yeah, yeah. So I have not seen how the game runs on Switch One. Legends. Have you seen? How it runs?
No, I have not.
They
So
didn't show you that in Paris.
no, they did not.
Interesting.
Everything pre-launch was Switch 2. I'll look after this. I'll update people next week on how the Switch 1
Yeah.
version runs. It'll probably, more people will have tested it out by then, and we'll have more data.
We'll hear
on that.
complaints.
Yeah,
we'll
I'm
hear
sure. I'm
problems.
sure it doesn't run as well as it runs. It runs very
Yeah.
well on Switch 2 from what I've seen so far. Like, I've not noticed any big performance dips or like screen tearing or anything like that. So
Are you playing it handheld or on TV?
I'm on TV. I'm a TV guy unless
Yeah.
like I'm on a plane or something.
Yeah, yeah. Legends, I think, and Scarlet and Violet, I played primarily handheld. I thought I was going to play primarily TV, and it just sort of became mostly handheld. I'm going to try to do TV for this.
All right. Well, Pokemon Legends ZA available now if you want to check that out. Again, having a great time with it so far. Another game that I've had a great time with so far. I've played it on PS5, so I don't know how it runs on Switch, but there's a game that Devolver Digital just published called Ball X Pit, and it is, I would say, like, the best way to describe it is like the elevator pitch is like it's a twin stick shooter meets Breakout, like the brick breaking game. meets Vampire Survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so basically, like, you choose a character. You start off with just one character, and then as you play, you unlock more and more characters. It's a roguelike. And you go back and forth all around in like an area where like enemies are coming at you in rows, and you have balls that you can shoot at them and do damage. And like some of them are just regular balls, other ones are like specialty. Like there's one that's like, I think your first character has like kind of like a spiky ball that he can shoot out every few shots, and that causes like bleed damage on them. And then every time you defeat an enemy, they will drop an experience gem, and you pick that up. And if you get enough of them, you level up. And when you level up, you can either upgrade an existing skill that you have or add a new skill. And like, so it's like by the time you get to like the first boss, you're like, all right, well, now I have like lasers that are shooting like horizontal or vertically. And then like I have a flame ball that I'm shooting out that's catching enemies on fire. And then I have an augment that like when I hit an enemy that's on fire, it deals extra damage. So like you're building out like your ideal loadout, and it's super satisfying to like have them coming at you in these rows, and like you'll see like, okay, well, I just defeated this enemy, so now there's like this perfect alleyway where if I shoot the balls up through there, that alleyway, it's gonna bounce around and deal like hit like 20 different enemies before the balls come back to me. And then like, you know, you keep upgrading. You can upgrade like your fire rate. You can upgrade like your defense. And then as you do that, you keep unlocking new characters or finding blueprints that you can use your resources to unlock new villagers. And then the other part of the gameplay loop is you go up in like, so like you're going down into like a pit in that, and that's where like the combat happens. Then you come back up to your village that's up on like this mountain, and in the village you have like a farm and like a village that you're building, and you unlock new buildings that give you different perks. And then also like farmland where it's like, all right, well, I have a like this was like a plot of wheat, and this is a plot of, I don't know what like another example of like a crop, but like different crops and resources. And after every run you get one shot of trying to harvest stuff. And so you have to like basically like puzzle bobble it, where like you aim and then shoot it, and it bounces around for a set number of seconds, and everything that you hit is stuff that you harvested in that shot. And then if you want another shot, you have to go play another round, and then you can use those resources to upgrade your characters, recruit new characters, upgrade your buildings in your village, all kinds of different stuff. So it's super fun. Sitting down, just playing like several runs of that has kind of become like an end of the night tradition for the last like week and a half for me. And yeah, so far I'm really loving it. And it's probably a top 5, maybe top 7 game of the year for me so far.
Oh, wow.
So I'm
Okay.
really, really having a great time. It's from a developer named Kenny Sun. And I mean, I'm not alone in it, because I think we gave it an 8.75 in Game Informer.
Wow.
Let me see what the Metacritic is here. It's an 84 on Metacritic and a user score of 9.6. So it's
Okay.
getting pretty good acclaim. I mean, there's only a few reviews of on user, but based on 23 critic reviews, it's an 84. So very much enjoying Ball X Pit, and I don't know how much it costs. That can be kind of the eShop gem of the week here, but
Yeah.
let's see what the cost is here for.
I guess $20.
It's $15.
Ooh.
So yeah, that,
Meta.
and it's going to be a good one
Meta.
for Switch too. I wish that I had a Switch copy. I might end up buying a Switch copy, even though I already have it on PS5.
Yeah.
Because the developer did provide a code for this early,
Oh,
so
okay.
we could
Yeah.
check it out ahead of launch. And it's such a perfect plane game that I am absolutely going to buy a copy for Switch now.
Awesome.
But yeah, that is the only non-Pokemon topic that we have, basically,
It
outside
does
of like
include a ball. It includes a ball.
It does. Oh my god! Imagine if the Switch version had a Pokeball where you could catch the enemies coming at you and then use
Yeah.
them in. Oh, what a collaboration!
There it is.
But if you are hoping for more Pokemon talk, I will have my full review of Pokemon Legends ZA next week. But we're also going to talk more about Pokemon in this next segment. So we're going to take our only break of this episode. And when we get back, we will be chatting all about the making of Pokemon Gold and Silver. We will be right back. We are back, and one of the best games in one of the most popular series on the planet turned 25 years old in the United States this week. Pokemon Gold and Silver had the unenviable task of following up the phenomenon that was Pokemon Red, Blue, Green, and Yellow, and they not only lived up to the expectations, but they delivered an objectively better game. Ben, what was your first experience of Pokemon Gold and Silver?
Oh my god. I remember laying in my room reading EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly.
This was like 1999, 2000?
Yeah, 1999, 2000, and seeing like a Japanese screenshot of like Meryl fighting against a Snubbull and like them talking about Pokemon eggs, and then the title of that section was called Pokesex ? And just like them like explaining breeding and the mechanics and everything like that.
Very 90s magazine of them.
Very 90s magazine. And then I actually got to play. This was the first ROM I ever played. And This was my introduction to emulators. I had my own Dell computer in my room when I was a kid. And I was doing like this summer camp. And somebody like was like, "Oh, I've played the Pokemon game. I can put it on a floppy disk for you." And
floppy disk,
and here is the emulator. And I'm like, "Okay, how do I do this? How do I do this?" And I was able to play a partially translated version of Pokemon Silver, which was just so bananas and bonkers. And if I remember correctly, the problem with the game was that you couldn't save because then it would just crash. So you had to do save states, and so after you beat the Elite Four, spoiler alert, whatever, you get to go to Kanto. But in order for that to happen, you have to let credits roll. You have to let the game save. So I never got to do that until I actually got the regular game. But like, I mean, even the lead up to it, with the anime and everything, where you had the first Pokemon movie and Meryl and Snubbull showed up in the Pikachu short.
And Donphan
showed up. And then you had the Lugia movie, Pokemon 2000, The Power of One. And so like, even like all of that stuff, I was like, this is so my jam. Like it really felt like a sequel in every sense of the word. And it was just such like, it was such a phenomenon for me. Like, I feel like that was my childhood. Gold, Silver, and Crystal were my childhood.
Do you have a favorite Gen 2 Pokemon?
It's Lugia.
Okay.
And Lugia's in like my top 5 Pokemon of all time.
That's a good pick. He's in my top 3 for Gen 2. It's probably like him, Totodile, and Tyranitar.
Yeah, like that's probably like my top 3 as well. I have soft spots for like other ones. Like I think Scizor and Heracross are cool. Did I use them? No, but like they were kick-ass. Steelix, cool Pokemon. Just it felt like a real continuation, but it also felt like an ending. And it was planned to be an ending, from my understanding.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in just a second.
So what was your first experience with
my first experience was actually way later. I've talked about it on the podcast how like I was, a Pokemaniac with Gen 1 and obsessed with it. It was my first RPG. It was the game that I got with my Game Boy Color. And I, played it nonstop, and then I fell off the Pokemon series. And
you were in 6th grade. Probably, right?
Something like that. I was in middle school for sure. So it was either 6th or 7th grade. And I just didn't play any Pokemon games until X and Y. That was my big entry point back into the series. And then since then, I've gone back and played other ones. Like I went and played Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, and then I played Heart Gold and Soul Silver. and that was my first time that I played through it, and it's just like, oh my god, this is like, I wish I never stopped playing Pokemon, because this would have blown my mind as a kid. It blew my mind as an adult, let alone as a kid.
Yeah. So did you play the original Gold and Silver or just Heart Gold Soul
No,
Silver?
I never played the original Gold and Silver.
You're off the podcast. Heart Gold Soul Silver is probably my favorite Pokemon game of all time. And I mean, you don't have that without Gold, Silver, Crystal.
Yeah.
It's just...
I mean, Heart Gold and Soul Silver is my favorite Pokemon game of all time as well, so I'm right there with you. So let's get into the making of Gold and Silver. This is going to be primarily focused on the original games, not really focused on Heart Gold, Soul Silver, but we are going to start...
Or Crystal, right?
A little bit of Crystal, but not really the making of that. We are going to start a little bit about kind of the fallout of Red, Blue, Green, and Yellow. And as usual, the bulk of my research came from Iwata Asks. There were some other things that I also pulled from a Game Informer article, actually from 2017. So the Iwata Asks that I found was about Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. So whenever they do that, they usually do touch on the creation of the original game, or like in the case of like when they were doing like an Iwata Asks for like New Super Mario Brothers, they talked about the creation of the Mario series a lot. So like that, I knew if there was a Heart Gold Soul Silver Iwata Asks, they would probably talk about the creation of Gold and Silver, and sure enough, they did. This conversation featured Satoru Iwata, who was the former president of Nintendo, talking to Tsunekaze Ishihara, who is currently the president and CEO of the Pokemon Company, and Shigeki Morimoto, who is he's at Game Freak. He was a director at that point.
The battle designer. He was the battle designer.
So, yeah, battle designer in the early days.
Probably the most valuable member of that team.
Definitely up there in terms of like value to the team. Like it's probably like Satoshi Tajiri, the art team that created the Pokemon themselves, and Junichi Masuda, who was the composer. But for Red and Blue, he was a programmer and designer. Ishihara now obviously oversees all Pokemon happenings. So Morimoto was designer on Red and Blue and Gold and Silver, and he was the director of Heart Gold and Soul Silver.
He also created Mew.
Yeah, Morimoto did. Yeah, we'll get into that.
He snuck him in.
Yeah. So Pokemon Red and Green had hit store shelves in Japan in 1996 before coming over to the US as Red and Blue in 1998. And believe it or not, sales were actually extremely sluggish very early on. The team attributes this to having to push the release out of 1995. Development on the original Pokemon games actually started in 1990, so it was already a 5-year development cycle. So they were like, all right, well, we've got to push. We're not going to be ready for holiday 1995. So they missed the holiday shopping season, but they didn't want to wait till holiday shopping season 1996. So that caused them to release it in February of 1996, which Ishihara in this interview said it was, quote, the very worst time of year to release games. And Iwata also had concerns about Pokemon Red and Green releasing on the original Game Boy because he felt it was at the end of its life cycle. And here's a quote from Ishihara. He said, quote, "That's why it was originally conceived as a game that would be developed for this new hardware. Then there were substantial delays in completing the title. Still, as a producer, when I saw the content of Pokemon Red and Pokemon Green, my personal feeling was that of all the titles I had experienced that I had played or worked on as a producer, this was of the very highest caliber. That is to say, I was confident that this was streets ahead of the crowd in terms of sheer enjoyment. But with the release date being what it was, I had considerable concerns about the title at first." And the result was that there were very, very slow start to the Pokemon Red and Green sales, but eventually the word of mouth and the Japanese manga caused the public to catch on, and Pokemon Red and Green ended up being massive successes, obviously. Ishihara said that the number of games they sold in a week started matching the number of games that they sold in the early months. And then eventually those weekly numbers became 3 to 4 times the sales of their first months. So it was just like a snowball effect. And it finally this is how long it took, just for a little bit of point of reference, because internet was in the very early stages then, so there wasn't like social media or anything to be like, hey, you should check out this Pokemon game. It finally became a #1 seller in Japan a year and a half after Red and Green first hit Japanese shelves, which was just in time for it to make its way west as Red and Blue, where it was also an enormous phenomenon. Which is so wild. It took a year and a half for Pokemon to catch on in Japan.
I guess they really loved Tetris and cigarettes. I don't know what else they had over there.
I mean, they had all the games that we had back then, only 2 years ahead of time. Because back then, like, the localization just took so much longer, and like it was like there were also a lot of debates of whether these Japanese games would have a market in the West. Just last week we were talking about how or not last week. God, what was the game? Oh, never mind. That's something else that I was talking about. But like there was early on, it was for research that I was doing for another thing that I'm working on, where Sony originally didn't want to localize Demon Souls for the West because they thought like there wasn't an audience for it in the West. It was so like Japanese focused, and then obviously that was a massive miscalculation because look at the Souls-like genre now. But on the Pokemon side, like after these sales started taking off and like all this multimedia started happening, the games just started flying off shelves, and that's where like the multimedia and merchandising empires started becoming established. And Ishihara, who was the producer of the original Pokemon games, started licensing Pokemon to basically like everyone who wanted it, and people bought up everything faster than they could make them. And this resulted in it becoming not just like a game juggernaut, but like just a worldwide merchandising juggernaut. And I'm going to ask you this, Ben. This is going to be a kind of a difficult question. From this era, do you have a favorite piece of merchandise?
Of Pokemon merchandise?
No, tell me your favorite Spider-Man merchandise. Of course, Pokemon.
Oh, man. I mean, the cards are up there, sure. Like, I've got some pretty cool stuff because, I used to play competitively, and I used to staff events, and I used to travel the country playing and staffing, and so I've gotten some pretty cool things. Other than that, it's gonna sound cheesy, but just my old original cartridges.
Yeah.
There's just something just so special about them. You're looking around for yours.
I was seeing if I have it sitting out, but I think it's in one of my drawers over by my TV.
Mine are in a bag in that closet in there. Like, there's just something so special about looking at that and remembering what that was. I don't know. I guess it would be that.
Yeah.
Pokemon merchandise, it's hard. There's always like some special stuff. Like I've got like the 20th or 25th or like some special anniversary like Lugia and Ho-Oh plushies over there. On my couch and stuff, but like I've got this like little Bagon figure and everything, and he just wants to fly, so he attaches balloons to his body. And
thankfully, it's not Drifloon.
Yeah, yes. So I don't know. What about you?
It's the cards, 100%.
Yeah,
I had so many of those cards, and I wish I still had them because they'd be worth a small fortune right now. Not even a small fortune; they'd be worth a major fortune.
And I still have mine.
I'm extremely jealous of that. So, following the success of Red, Blue, Green, Yellow, or I guess Red and Green in particular, Game Freak and the Pokemon Company began thinking about how they could push beyond that first generation. And the mission was to create the ultimate Pokemon game, which is funny because that's what Junichi Masuda told me was the mission with Sword and Shield when I went and did the Pokemon Sword and Shield cover story. But Ishihara acknowledged that he assumed that these would be the best Pokemon games the team would ever release, to the point that he couldn't imagine doing more after this.
Yep.
And as a result, they named them Pokemon Gold and Silver to represent these being like the best versions of the series. And here's the quote from Ishihara. Quote, the reason that I licensed so many products and developed things like the trading cards and was basically to ensure that Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver were successful. I felt that was my primary role. So at the time, I worked with the assumption that after we put out Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver, my work as far as Pokemon was concerned would be done. So for me, Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver represented the finish line. I didn't intend to make any more Pokemon titles. I even thought that once we entered the 21st century, it would be time for me to do something else entirely. So they started work on Pokemon Gold and Silver right after the release of Red and Green, and Ishihara was so determined that Gold and Silver were going to be the final in the series that he didn't want the anime to happen when it did, because he did some research that basically told him that the anime adaptations of games don't tend to last longer than a few months. So he wanted to make sure that it ran concurrently with the release of Gold and Silver. So he wanted to delay the anime, but that ended up not happening because the Gold and Silver were planned to come out in 1998 in Japan in order to sync up with the end of the first season. But the team, which was led by Game Freak president and Pokemon creator Satoshi Tajiri, basically instead of focusing on Gold and Silver, they started focusing on creating Pokemon Blue for the West and then Pokemon Yellow for worldwide release. And here's what Ishihara had to say about that. He said, quote, Pokemon Red and Green turned into such a phenomenon in Japan that we were requested to release them in America, but working on the overseas versions was going to set back the development of Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver even further. So I found a 2017 interview that Junichi Masuda did with Game Informer. And Junichi Masuda was the composer and a programmer on Red and Green before doing the same on Gold and Silver. And he talked about how hard it was to get Gold and Silver off the ground due to the financial strain of all things, which is crazy to think about, the Pokemon Company and Game Freak struggling financially. But there was a 6-year development cycle of Red and Green. So like,
want some of my cards? They might help.
Yeah, now I think they're okay though. So here's what Masuda told us in 2017. He said, quote, after Red and Green came out and the follow-up games, we didn't have a lot of money. We were kind of out of money at that point because we had spent all the development funds and everything. So we needed to make other games to stay in business. So Game Freak had been creating other games that actually never came out to the US, in addition to those upgraded versions of Red and Green being Blue and Yellow. And because of this, it kept pulling them away from their responsibilities with Gold and Silver. And because as it is to this day, Game Freak is an extremely small team. And that was even more true back then. Here's what Morimoto had to say. He said, quote, at that time, we had very few programmers. That wasn't just the case for Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver, but for Pokemon Red and Pokemon Green as well. There were only about 4 programmers. And what's more, though we were creating games with a very small team, we were very greedy in terms of all the features we wanted to include in the games. I think that may be why they experienced such a difficult birth. So a lot of things going on with like trying to figure out what they want to put on and put into the game. And despite, go ahead.
Just as a sidestep, there was, when they were making the second Pokemon movie, I don't know if you knew this, but like the person who wrote that movie wrote like the majority of the anime,
mm-hmm.
and he had created Lugia for Lugia to just solely be for the movie and not be in a game at all.
I don't remember that fact.
Yeah. So like, Did You Know Gaming did like a really good like history about like how the creation of Lugia basically drove this person kind of crazy.
Oh, that's right. I have seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just very fascinating. Like, just like the whole like way of how Pokemon handled certain things back then. It's just way different now, obviously.
Yeah. So they had all these ambitions for Gold and Silver. They had this extremely small team. They were being pulled in all these different directions to try to keep Game Freak afloat, despite how successful Red and Green were. but they never scaled back any ideas or features from Gold and Silver. And here's what Masuda had to say in that Game Informer interview. He said, quote, "Development wasn't going as well as we had hoped it would. At that point, I kind of took over and we decided to make the game based on Kyoto, and we sort of rapidly developed the game from that point on. We still didn't have a formal development style at the time. It was a more gradual process. That was all of us just us trying our best, I guess." And he was kind of joking around, laughing when he said that. And to help remedy this, Satoru Iwata actually joined the team a little bit to help compress the graphic code, which helped them fit even more data on these cartridges, which we're going to get into in a second here. Gold and Silver were first shown off at Nintendo Space World in Japan in 1997, and they were advertised as a generational leap ahead rather than the incremental upgrade, as was the case with Pokemon Yellow, which was set to release a year later in Japan. And so rather than revisiting Kanto with the same monsters and just like iterative gameplay, Game Freak installed a ton of new Pokemon to catch with a new story and a new region to explore. And as Masuda had
character
mentioned,
designs
new
that
character
were in that
designs.
Space World demo did not make it into like the final.
Yeah, there's been a whole lot of that, of like monsters and characters that have not that were not out of that.
But some of them, I think maybe like 2 or 3 of them ended up like in later games, like they were reused. It's very interesting if you go into that like Space World demo.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that has come out about that. I didn't want to get too much into like leaks because we as we talked about at the top of the show.
Yes.
But there was a bunch of leaks that found like an overwhelming amount of cut content from Gold and Silver, which is funny to kind of fly in the face of what they're saying. It's like, hey, we didn't change the features at all. And it's like, but they did cut some content, it seems, based on some of these leaks. On the topic of Johto, so Masuda wanted another region of Japan to be featured in Gold and Silver, so he lobbied on the region being Kyoto, and he said, quote, "I knew I wanted to focus on towers, and those cities had those old kinds of Japanese towers, and that's where the inspiration came from. In that sense, it was a different approach for what we did in Red and Green, because we basically caring about the setting. And because of Iwata's involvement in helping to compress and optimize their source code, as well as a larger cartridge, Game Freak was able to include 2 whole regions in the game, as you had mentioned at the top, Ben. So when players finish Gold and Silver, an entire second post-game story campaign opens up where players return to Kanto from Gen 1 to not only take on the gym leaders, but also eventually challenge the player character from those games, Red. Just mind-blowing. One of the mind-breaking things that has happened. That's like a top 10 gaming moment for me of all time, even though I experienced it in adulthood.
Like, you have to understand that, like, that was my Star Wars. It was that and the second season of Digimon. Like, those two things, defined, like, storytelling in my brain and everything like that. It was just so great. Like, how, like looking back, like, Kanto was very watered down in Gold and Silver. Like, there wasn't a Safari Zone in the original. They did bring it back in Heart Gold and Soul Silver.
Certain things were destroyed, like the volcano erupted and destroyed a lot of the volcano islands.
You couldn't get the 3 birds. You couldn't do, like, you had to get them from time traveling trading, and like, but the charm of seeing like Kanto essentially 3 years later, and seeing
the passage of time, different events happening.
The charm of that, and seeing that, much like the real world, not everything just stays the same. Things change, whether or not that's good change or bad change. Some things, sometimes there's failure, like the Rockets were trying to bring back their boss and that wasn't happening. And like, just certain things I think were just so well done that whether or not it was like intentional to like have that kind of really deep feeling of story that was just like, that resonated, like, it was it was marvelous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's still one of my favorite gaming moments. I love that like certain gym leaders are different. Like I think
Yep.
Koga had retired and it's like his daughter now
No,
or something.
he was Elite Four. He ascended,
Oh,
and
okay.
his daughter was a gym leader.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah,
And like you
kick
go around and
ass.
mess up stuff with Lance. Like you mess up the rockets with Lance.
Yeah, and Blue, Gary Green, whatever. He was like, yeah. So Giovanni was the gym leader here. I'm now the gym leader here.
That's
There's no
right.
other trainers here. There's just me and my giant Legos. Like it was like, and that really his gym was just filled with giant Legos, and it was just like so interesting just how they did certain things.
Yeah, I loved it so much. I mean, it really like Pokemon Gold and Silver's main story is fantastic, but that really elevated it.
Lavender Town, Pokemon Tower, where all those Pokemon were buried, demolished, became a radio tower.
Yeah. No longer honoring their memory.
Yes.
As I mentioned, like the ability to compress their code down is largely attributed to Satoru Iwata, which in that Game Informer interview, Masuda just flat out called him a genius. And this was 2 years after his passing that interview took place, so it was still relatively fresh. And if you go back and listen to the Satoru Iwata episode that I did a few weeks ago, or I guess it's a few months ago at this point, you'll understand why he was such a genius. But another reason that they were able to do this was because they were able to use the larger cartridges from the get-go. So here's a quote from Masuda. He said, quote, "With red and green, this material was still back when it was running on 2 megabit cartridge. And halfway through the development, we upgraded to a 4 megabit cartridge. And as programmers, we were like, oh my God, double the space," which is hilarious to think of 4 megabits as like, look how much space we have. Meanwhile, I just installed an 8 terabyte SSD in my PC.
Yeah.
I could make a Pokemon game now, I guess.
Yes.
So that
I'm a game reviewer, so yes.
So that extra space allowed them to double the scope of Gold and Silver, and because they were developing for the Game Boy Color this time around, they could also show more detail in the sprites and inject color into all the characters. So Gold and Silver also introduced a bunch of new mechanics like breeding, as you mentioned before, held items, and then the ability to get Pokemon from your red, blue, and green cartridges. Meaning you can bring like backward compatibility essentially.
Yeah.
So in Pokemon Red, Blue, and Green, Morimoto installed the Pokemon named Mew. Some would say as a prank to players.
Yes.
Because Mew was not available to be found anywhere in any version.
The development team.
What was that?
I think it was a prank to the development team.
Okay, I know it was after they debugged, because like Iwata was like, why did you create new content after debugging was done? He's like, I don't know, I just wanted
to. I think it was a prank to Iwata. Like I don't think it was so much as of a prank to the players. I think it was more of like, you're giving me a treasure to look for, and I'm gonna look for it, even if it means like pushing this truck and not getting anything, or trying to push a truck and not getting anything. You have to go to Six Flags to get this? What? That's so crazy.
Yeah, it was something that like people just didn't have a good way to get it.
Game Shark.
That was how I did. I had Game Shark or Game Genie or whatever, but it created somewhat of a craze in the early days of the internet because people were like desperately trying to figure out how to get Mew, and this was only exacerbated by the Pokemon the first movie, where Mew was one of the main characters, and like you had alluded to, it did lead to the famous under the truck theory.
And it also led to like a lot of like internet rumors.
Yeah.
Like that there were other Pokemon that were hidden. Like that you do this to get Togepi, or you do this to get Nido God,
Pikablue.
Or you get this to Pikablue, or just like a lot of or you do this to fight Professor Oak.
Mm-hmm.
Like just a lot of like weird I remember like going to a computer lab and printing these out.
Yep.
And just like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And it was just nonsense.
That was exactly my experience with Mario 64. It's like I had like a binder where I would go to AOL keyword N64, and there were just codes in there, and I'm like, oh, well, people put it on the internet, it must be true.
Yeah,
and back then, people actually thought if you put something on the internet, it was true. and it was all nonsense. So like I was like, oh, okay, I need to do like this very specific, very arduous thing to get Luigi in Super Mario 64. Obviously impossible, but I tried it, that's for sure.
Somebody was like, "There's a Pokemon named Anthrax that you can catch,"
That's
and I'm like,
right,
"Oh
yeah.
god, yeah."
So to try and recreate this craze, Game Freak and Morimoto created Celebi, which is another mythical Pokemon that could
Celebi.
Celebi, Rayquaza, whatever. It's
Yeah,
tomato.
yeah.
Although Rayquaza is the official pronunciation I learned from Sarah Natacheni when she came on the podcast.
Celebi is definitely like that was in a movie, in
Yeah.
2 movies.
Well,
Yeah,
so is Rayquaza.
yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah.
basically, another mythical Pokemon, Celebi. I'm never gonna get that right. Celebi, another Pokemon that can only be received via Nintendo promotions, and the first of these events was Space World 2000.
Yeah, yeah, it was at Space World, but it was also for Pokemon Crystal. You got it. This was the original DLC where you had to have like a Japanese cell phone
Oh my
in order to get
god!
it, or like it was just so like I remember. I started like remembering this as I was like walking to the gym earlier. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how like people got it. Like it was just crazy, and it
They
was
should
just
do
not
that for
available.
they should do that for the Pokemon Legends ZA DLC. You have to go buy a Japanese cell phone in order to get it.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
I mean, we get some element of that nowadays with you have to change like the region of your eShop and all that stuff to get
Yup.
certain things. So, but
Loopholes.
notable is that Space World 2000 is where the famous Super Mario 128 and realistic looking Zelda GameCube tech demos that were shown off, which eventually came
Mm.
back to bite Nintendo because people were like, "Oh, we're getting a sequel to Mario 64," and then it was Mario Sunshine, and people were upset. And then, "Oh, we're getting a realistic-looking Zelda," and then we got Wind Waker, and people were upset. So that was a monumental
And
event.
now Space World doesn't exist
It
anymore.
does not. So Pokemon Red, Blue, and Green were in development for, or I guess Pokemon Red and Green were in development for 6 years. Pokemon Gold and Silver were in development for 3.5 years. Finally coming out in November 1999 in Japan on Game Boy Color before coming to the US on October 15th, 2000, which is why we're talking about it on this episode. And the game was critically acclaimed. Silver got a 91 on game rankings, and Gold got an 89, so very high scores. Went on to sell more than 23 million copies, which fell short of Red and Blue, but not by that much. Red, Blue, and Green and Yellow, or Red, Blue, and Green sold 31 million copies. And I think Yellow sold 14 million copies. So 23 million was above Yellow, but below Red and Blue. And here's what Ishihara said after the release. Quote, I remember that when Pokemon Gold and Silver were released, I felt like a burden had finally been lifted from my shoulders. We'd had our sights set on the finish line of Pokemon Gold and Silver for so long, and now that we'd finally completed the major series running right through from Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue, I felt I could say to Tajiri-san, I've fulfilled my duty. But obviously that ended up not being the case, as Gold and Silver sold even faster than Red, Blue, and Green right out the gates. And as a result, the number of licensing proposals and additional games flooded in more than before. And as a result, Ishihara said that the anime needed to continue. So he laid out ways that could happen. And to help coordinate all this influx of licensing requests, Ishihara went on to found the Pokemon Company to aid Game Freak with managing this exploding brand. And this was around the time that Satoru Iwata left HAL to join Nintendo. And one of his first jobs was helping Ishihara found and establish the Pokemon Company. And here's what Ishihara had to say about that. He said, quote, Game Freak really had their hands full and wouldn't have had the capacity to work on the next title. The necessity to properly gather together all of the strands of brand management and overseeing licensing led to the establishment of the Pokemon Company. And, the Pokemon Company is still running to this day. And to ramp up hype for the release of Pokemon Gold and Silver, Nintendo, Game Freak, and what would eventually become the Pokemon Company did a full-on multimedia blitz through the anime and also Pokemon the first movie, as we had mentioned. That gave us our first look at some Gen 2 Pokemon through the animated short that aired before it, starring Pikachu and several Pokemon.
Togepi in the anime as well.
Yeah, Togepi was in the anime. Donphan made his debut in Pokemon the first movie. And that came out a full year before Gold and Silver. Both in Japan, it came out a year before the Japanese version of Gold and Silver, and then it came out a full year before the US version in the States.
And Ash was 10 years old forever.
Forever. So Nintendo this time actually anticipated massive sales. So they ordered 8 million cartridges at launch. And unfortunately, an earthquake hit the cartridge factory in Taiwan. So they had to cut their initial shipment, which created a massive shortage of copies at the launch window. Some people were critical of Nintendo, saying, "Oh, this is the standard Nintendo practices of artificial scarcity." But there was an actual earthquake that did damage their factory, so they did have to resort to leaning on some of their other production centers. So, in the time since the release of Gold and Silver, Pokemon Crystal was released in July 2001 in the US, which was essentially the Pokemon Yellow that it improved several elements of Gold and Silver, and it was kind of like the ultimate version of that game for a long time. Then in 2009, they were remade as Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver for the Nintendo DS. And then in 2017, Gold and Silver came in their original forms onto the 3DS. And to this day, they're among the most beloved Pokemon games of all time. And to this day, we still have no freaking official way to play them on modern Nintendo hardware.
Dumb.
It's so stupid. So obviously Ishihara's assumption that Pokemon Gold and Silver would be the end of his obligation to the Pokemon franchise proved completely untrue, because he's still the president and CEO of Pokemon Company to this day. We still see him at every Pokemon Presents live stream. Morimoto still at Game Freak. His most recent work, as far as we know, is on Scarlet and Violet's battle system. And then Junichi Masuda would elevate beyond composer and programmer to become the figurehead of Game Freak, as well as the director of Ruby Sapphire, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Diamond Pearl, and a few others. And then he then became the series producer at Game Freak up until 2022, when he left Game Freak to join the Pokemon Company as chief creative fellow, where he joined Ishihara in kind of overseeing and shepherding the Pokemon franchise as a whole. So, Ben, you already said the Pokemon Gold and Silver are your favorite Pokemon games of all time, but it's not available anywhere on modern systems.
Heart Gold, Soul Silver.
Heart Gold, Soul Silver. Okay, so apologies there. But that generation is among your favorite, is your favorite in the Pokemon. Yeah. Give me your realistic pitch, and then give me your dream pitch for how they could pull off a modern remake of Gold and Silver. So realistic pitch first, and then give me your dream pitch that you don't see Game Freak going for.
Ooh. You didn't ask me this before the recording, so I'm really on the spot.
Or just give me your dream remake if you just want to go that route.
So the question is realistic pitch, or dream pitch and realistic pitch, or what was it?
Give me a realistic pitch, something you could see Game Freak doing, and then give me your dream pitch of like, all right, this is maybe a little bit beyond what Game Freak has shown that they are willing to do.
Okay.
I mean, I can just give you mine if you want to take a second to think about it.
Give me yours. I'll think about it.
So I think my realistic pitch would be Let's Go Johto, right? Like, do what they did with Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, just a modern retelling, still very linear based, still like the basic structure of Gold and Silver, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, but, add a little bit of content and give it modern graphics, give it modern mechanics, hopefully not the Pokemon Go inspired mechanics that we had in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, but just basically bring it in its essentially current form to modern consoles with, all the quality of life stuff that you would expect. That's my realistic pitch.
I would probably, do it as Let's Go Johto, Let's Go Marill, Let's Go Togepi.
Okay, those would be your two.
That would probably be like, well, if I were to go with what you were saying.
Yeah, Togepi would definitely be one of them. I don't know if Marill would be the other one, but I don't know who else.
Yeah, that's the thing. I felt like Marill and Togepi were because Marill showed up in the movie, and then Marill was part of the Orange Islands.
Yeah,
and it was a hallmark. It was a promotional Pokemon. It was It was one of the two cards given on Japanese ANA Airlines.
That's right.
To advertise. Like there was There's a lot of stuff with that Pokemon. So that was your realistic pitch. What's your dream pitch?
My dream pitch would be remaking it in the style of Scarlet and Violet, where it's an open world Johto. The cities are fully realized. It's not just a little towns that you go to here and there, because the scopes of those, the scales of those cities on the Game Boy games in particular are quite humble. So if you actually build it out and make it feel like a living, breathing Pokemon game, use all of the lessons that they've learned through the development of Sword and Shield, the Legends games, and Scarlet and Violet, I think you could make an incredible recreation of Johto within the format of that. Just open it up a whole lot, and also give us full interactivity between the Pokemon. Don't give us like the PS2 era animations where it's like they do a gesture in the direction of the opponent Pokemon, but it's mostly like those floating holograms that are doing all the heavy lifting. Give us actual interactivity, and then, give us basically the open world version of Johto, and then you travel across, and guess what's across the water? Open world Kanto.
Here's my dream scenario. My dream scenario.
So your realistic scenario would be Let's Go Johto, or
my realistic scenario would probably be more towards a Legends Johto.
Okay.
It would probably be more towards a Legends Johto, and it would take place in the past. We would see about like what happened with the towers. That would be that would be the form of revisiting things. That would be my realistic. And I for a time I felt that was going to be our next Legends game.
Me too.
I was very surprised that they ended up doing Kalos. But I guess there's a certain logic to why they did Kalos. I felt like it was the place that had the most unanswered questions when you finished X and Y. Like, what was the story with Zygarde? Oh, well, we'll do something with it in Sun and Moon. Well, what you did in Sun and Moon doesn't really answer a lot of things. Like, there were so many things about it.
Yeah. So that's your realistic pitch, and I like that. So you're thinking less of a remake and more of a prequel.
Yeah.
Okay.
My dream pitch would actually be also not a remake, but 3 years after you beat Red. So 3 years further in Johto.
Mm-hmm.
And you revisit Johto, seeing that change.
Oh, so you get to see the passage of time in Johto, like a flip in the script there. Do you get to go back to Kanto again? And
you would also get you would get to go back to Kanto. If I had more time, I would have fleshed this out more. But like that, like that's like gun to my head. Like, what is your dream pitch? Like, my dream pitch is to see more of these characters and see more of them develop, while also it being more of a open world. It wouldn't be top down. So it would very much look like what you're saying with Scarlet and Violet and everything, but you would be able to go into houses, you'd be able to go into places and everything. Riding Pokemon would probably be the beasts, the 3 beasts, and you would learn their history as well. Damn it, I want it now.
Well, maybe one day we will get that, or at the very least, maybe we'll get the original versions or the DS remakes on Switch 2. God, I want that. But, Ben, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of All Things Nintendo.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. As you know, my Patreon and the associated Discord server are the best ways to get any questions or comments in, but you can also get in touch with me at brian@allthingsnintendo.com, or hit me up on Blue Sky or Instagram at Brian P. Shea. So Ben, as we mentioned, I will be seeing you at MAGFest 2026 in January, but where can the people find you online in the meantime?
You can find me on Twitter. Somehow I'm still there. Dr. Ben MD, or you can find me on Instagram, Ben Richlin MD. Working on several different projects. Some stuff it's stuff that I can't really talk about yet, but you will find out and hear about them soon.
Very much looking forward to that, but that is our show for this week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of All Things Nintendo. Before we get out of here, real quick, I just want to give a special thank you to the $10 patrons of the podcast. Alex Stadnick, Andy Junkins, Ben Richlin, Chaps My Ass, Derek Sigmund, Dusty Beeman, Ian T. Clark, Jason Thompson, Jawar Hello, Johnny Five, Jose Villalobos, Joshua DeProy, Casey Radioman, Cody Gibson, Creeper 207, Paul at Drunk on Mako, Pratable, Rob McCann, Bobby Mac 265, Robert Sosa, Roberto Nieves, Roger Riker, Russell Sayer, Smithy Poo, and Zek 3 Swords Sama. Thank you so much for your continued support. You truly are the reason I'm able to keep doing this week after week.